One of the reasons why this model has not been pursued historically at scale is because, the surface level analysis is that the business model doesn't work. Okay,
Correct.
so let's take the business model of a church, quote unquote. Largely is driven by tithes and offerings. So you plant a church in Scottsdale, you plant a church in New York, you plant a church in some of these areas. It makes a lot of sense, right? Based on the
Yeah.
demographic that
Yeah.
you're reaching,
Right.
you can even just plant a smaller church and still be a really viable community. Going into more of an urban setting, maybe a setting that socioeconomically is middle lower. How do you make that business model? Let's get to the brass tacks. How do you make
Yeah.
that work?
I think it's a few things, and I could tell you, you could look up the statistics. We have a campus in Pomona, the city of Pomona. You can pull up the crime rate of Pomona easily. You could pull up the financial. It's not a safe city. Whole Avenue is one of the highest forms of prostitution in all of Southern California. You go to Holt Street on a Friday night, there's literally hundreds of prostitutes. At our church at Pomona, we bought a building, a Salvation Army that was about 80 years old. So all that to say, first of all, it takes an investment. So you need a church kind of our size who's going to actually be able to found a couple years, that's going to be able to, for a couple years, absolve part of that negative that's going to happen for that church. So for us, it has taken extraordinarily a short time, thank God, but it's taken us 3 years to actually not recoup all the money we put in, but for it to be financially completely sustained. And so the campus we have in Pomona, there is, even though we're paying a mortgage and other things like that, that campus completely takes care of all of its bills, 3 full-time employees, all salaries, everything like that. And so it's not a worry of ours. Our church from our Rancho campus, which is a minority church as well, we raised money on the front end, we sowed the seeds into it, and then from there we launched it with about a $500,000. And then now it completely takes care of itself 3 years later. And here's how we do it with those type of communities. Number one is people who retain a large amount of debt do not give. They don't tithe. They definitely don't tithe. More than anything, they may tip you during a season. And then outside of that, it's not going to be regular giving. So some of the first things you're going to have to do is you're going to have to enable courses and classes that teach people how to better manage their finances. So things like Financial Peace University and those sorts. The next one I think they do is called Legacy or something like that. And so you want to be able to immediately start talking about financial responsibility. We talk about giving every single week. Mm-hmm. Some churches, particularly I know those churches in the South, they don't talk about money at all. It's just, we know that you're going to give. There's a bucket at the back, or people just, they don't talk about it. They don't teach about it. Every week we have caveated 5 minutes in our service where we talk about finances. Now we don't talk about guilt give or anything like that. And we don't talk about false promises. We don't say that, if you give, God's going to give you it 100-fold. And if you give $100 by next month, God will give you $1,000. By no means do we do any of that stuff. We just talk about biblical financial responsibilities. We talk about how we have to be stewards of our money and how your dollar is a seed. Where you plant it, it will grow. If I plant my money every week into the liquor store, then what will grow of it? Alcohol addiction and everything else that follows it. If I plant my dollar in the church, then you'll see fruit of it. You'll see it in our programs. And so that's just number one. We're talking about money. We're being unabashful about it. We're talking about the importance of giving, and we're seeing people delivered of that money and that love of money. We call it, in our church saying, we call it that love of mammon, right? And so we talk about how we got to release that in generosity. The other thing we talk about is we use language that's relevant to today. So we talk about subscription at your church. Like if you have a Netflix subscription, gym membership, and all these other things like that, how much do you give monthly to your church per the value that your church is giving you? Now, for us, we do a lot of programs for our members, so they equate that really easily. We do forward. We talk about deliverance. We do counseling at our church. We do family programs. We do we do a food distribution center. So our people in that community, they see that really fast. And we don't have to have anyone that gives a lot. We just need enough of us doing our part. That's what we tell the church all
So
the time.
good.
Like, we're not looking for anyone rich to come in here and give. What we
Yeah.
are is looking for everybody who considers this home to do their part. That's what. So it's the conversations we're having in that space that you have to do different than when you're in, like you said, Scottsdale, Phoenix, much more places that are upper middle class to upper class, where they get it. They just go, oh, I'm just going to start giving, or all these things like that. We have to educate, but also our ministry matches what we're educating. The people are receiving, and every dollar that we ask to give, we show them where it goes. So if we're raising money for to improve the youth center, that thing's got to be done in the next 90 days to 6 months. Because a
Wow.
lot of people in the minority communities have gone to churches that have raised money, and then
Where'd it
the
go?
pastor's gotten a bigger car, or it's
Right.
gone towards something else. And so we go, hey, you could bet us to it. You give this money towards this project, we have it already set up. In the next 90 days to 6 months, it's going to be done. Where this isn't going to prolong over 3 to 5 years. And then they trust you with that. So we've seen it happen at our campus, being a 90% minority church in Rancho, and then our other campus in Pomona, which is actually an impoverished city. Both have been financially in the positive for years now, in that sense.
That's brilliant. I just love how you took what many see as an obstacle as an opportunity for greater intentionality, right? And you saw this opportunity of, cool, this is the situation. How do we actually up our game? How do
Yeah.
we up our resources? How do we up our education? How do we up our Bible literacy of what it means to be financially responsible, and what the Bible informs us of how we can be, as God's children, financially flourishing, right?
Yeah.
And I love what you said. That model, it works. It works because there's a couple things that needed to happen. Number one, you needed a sending house
Yeah.
that did a seed investment,
Yeah.
right? So that was critical to get it started, to give it enough runway so that you could mobilize the masses, right? And so you don't need, a few multi-million dollars even standing it up to be sustainable. No, you just give the church 12, 18 months worth of runway to do the education, to do the hard work, to do the financial freedom courses, so
Yeah.
that it can become viable just through its own community that's contextual to that urban city. I love that, man. I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.